we don't need to earn by ourselves, because God has given us all the blessing, all the pathway, all the rules and regulations that we just need to accept by faith, and by grace He offers everything for us. Satan leads millions to worship the object of creation rather than the creator. Egyptian worship Iman, Babylonian worship Baal, Marduk, or Persian Mitra, or Greece Helios, Apollo, and in Rome they worship Sol. Those are sun god. So the trick started, right? Sun. These sun god worshippers worship on Sunday. Satan was very wise to blend the Christianity and the sun worshippers. And today my topic is some reason why the Sabbath is under attack. So this will be very important topic for us, because sometimes we attend church on Sabbath day and we used to know that it's beneficial and it's something that we should know, but we forgot some of the deep beneficial things and what God has for us and what God has something for us as we attend on a Sabbath day. Before even the world existed, there was Satan who attacked the authority of God. Satan, he planned very well to attack humanity and God's authority and the truth about the Sabbath. But we are very fortunate that God has sent His Son. Even though we fall, we have been fallen into temptation and fallen into sin, God sent His Son and to redeem us from this sin. And now God is planning to re-establish the Garden of Eden ahead of us. So this is a blessing from God that He provided everything we need in our life. So let's talk about Satan's plan against the Sabbath. If you look back the journey of Israelites, they have been attacked by Satan in many ways. Like people who did not worship the true God, the Creator. So the Israelites themselves always attack with people who do not know, who do not worship the true God. And what happened is the majority of the people worship sun, right? Sun God. If you look at the history, Satan leads millions to worship the object of creation rather than the creator. It's true. In Burma, it's my origin country. These Burmese people, 93 or 4% are Buddhists. But I live in a very remote place and where many Christians. So I don't live with Buddhism, territory. So I don't really know. This morning we learned Buddhism and Jesus Christ in youth class, but I had not many things to say, because even though my origin country is Buddhism country, what I know is if you don't do good things, and you will not have a good life, a good next life. For example, if you donate a lot of monies and if you help people, if you do good to people, and next life you will gonna be a king or a queen or a rich man. So that's what they believe in Burma, in Buddhism. So they try themselves to be good and to donate and to feed the poor and to give money to people. So that's what they did, and because they want to be a good person in the next life. That's how they comfort each other. So if you don't do good, maybe next life, what they told me is you will become a cow and you will work in the field all the time. So people are afraid to be a cow, and they donate a lot of money to the poor. But in Christianity, we don't need to earn by ourselves, right? Because God has given us all the blessing, all the pathway, right? All the rules and regulations that we just need to accept by faith, and by grace He offers everything for us. So Satan leads millions to worship the object of creation rather than the creator. Egyptian worship Iman. So Babylonian worship, those are sun god. Babylonian worship Baal, Marduk, or Persian Mitra, or Greece Helios, Apollo, and in Rome they worship Sol. Those are sun god. So the trick started, right? Sun. These sun god worshippers worship on Sunday. So it was the beginning of Sunday. So Satan was very wise to blend the Christianity and, the sun worshippers. So in early Christian century, he blended sun worship with Christianity. That's true, right? If you read the history, sometimes we used to say Constantine started Sunday worship. Actually, when I study, he wasn't the one, but he just gave the idea. He started the idea because if he started doing it immediately, then people would shock. So in AD 321, Constantine made this law that on the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and people residing in cities rest. So he started Sunday law. He did not say it was Sabbath. He did not say it was the Lord's day. And he said day of the sun, right? Day of the sun, a Roman civil term. So after the Constantine, the church leaders and church fathers, they adapt Sunday because they thought, wow, we got more people because on Sunday, the sun god's worshiper worship on Sunday. So if we just blend these, two groups, then we have more people, the majority, right? That's why after Constantine, many church leaders began encouraging Sunday worship. So their motto, what they wanted to do actually is they want to distance from Judaism, Jew culture. That was the intention. They want to distance themselves with the Jewish people. That was the intention. So by the late 4th century, church council like Laodicea AD 364 began saying Christians should not Judaize by resting on Sunday. So they hate Jewish people. That was the intention. So Christians should honor Sunday instead. Now the blend was complete. A pagan civil day plus Christian religious. So Satan was very wise, right? He started this formula from the time of Israelites when they were on the journey to Canaan land, 40 years. So these people worship sun god. It was, the god that they worship. But now they blended these two together. If you study science, then what do science people say? I don't know, some students, they may know that, scientists do not believe God, right? But, the first scientists were believers. The first scientists were believers, if you read history. But why Satan was trying to convince people on this science, right? Satan got many plans and many ideas to twist everything around. Nowadays, these scientists trap people with scientific argument that, what they say is evolve on its own rather than being created. God didn't create the heaven and the earth. God didn't create us. There was a time when something developed and now we become like this. Right? Some people say there was a big bang and everything was blush and so everything was in place. So this kind of Satan's plan have been seen in this world. So these days, the most dangerous arguments for believer is that if you are saved by grace, what happened? If you are saved by grace, it is not necessary to keep God's law. It's not necessary to keep God's law. So the greatest attacker of God's law is Satan. Since, in heaven. So we have to remember these things. Why, Satan attacks Sabbath. So let's talk about the first reason. Sabbath is a memorial of creation. So, I'm just wondering right now, many Christians do not want to keep the Sabbaths. But they are arguing with atheism. Atheists. There is no point. Atheists said the world had no beginning. We just become like this. There was nothing. So out of nothing, we become. But the Christians, they are arguing with, atheism. But the problem is they didn't care Genesis. Many Christians didn't care the Genesis, the foundation of the world, the foundation of humanity. Right? Something strange, right? So they argue with atheism, those who say no God, but some Christians do not care the Genesis, the book of Genesis. Actually, Genesis is the foundation of human being. If you don't have the foundation what will going to happen? So Jesus said, I am the rock. Who have the foundation of the rock will be firm. But now we don't want to go back to the foundation, Genesis. But Genesis said what? Genesis said, to keep the Sabbath, right? Because after the 6 days and on the Sabbath day, God rested and blessed and sanctified. Right? This is the foundation. This is not actually related to the Israelites and any tribes of the world. It's related to human being. That's why today, the devil hates the Sabbath because it's a memorial of creation. The devil hates Jesus, the creator. When it happened? In heaven. The devil, Satan, hates Jesus. Why? Jesus possessed all the authority. And he was the God. That's why Satan hates Jesus too much. That's why after Satan was kicked out from heaven, then he is still attacking Jesus Christ. So the Sabbath was set aside at creation as a memorial of God's love and a symbol of God's care. Why we can say this? In Genesis 2:1-3 tells us that, thus the heavens and the earth and all the hosts of them were finished, and on the seventh day God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. And then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it. This is the foundation of God's law. So all the scientific creation had a very concrete law. I think I have already said. If you want to do an iPad like this, you must have a very concrete law. You cannot change it to make an iPad, right? So like iPhone, they have a very concrete law. I don't know this scientific calculation, but you cannot mess with their law, right? The same thing. God had a foundation. After the creation, and God set aside the seventh day, the Sabbath, so that he can bless people and he can have fellowship with his people and he can sanctify people. That's why Satan do not like these days, because Satan do not want us to have a good relationship with Jesus Christ. Satan does not like we have sanctification life. That's why Satan attacked the Sabbath day very much. Satan do not like we are blessed. Then God blessed the seventh day, right? So Satan doesn't like we are blessed. We are going to be blessed by God. That's why Satan actually attacks the Sabbath day, because on the Sabbath day everything is complete. God had participated in creation. Jesus Christ was the active agent. That's why Satan actually attacked Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was the person who created the heaven and the earth. So Sabbath is a monument to Jesus and the creative power. By attacking the Sabbath, Satan attacks Jesus. So attacking the Sabbath means attacking Jesus. How do we understand? If you attack, as we are human beings, we don't directly attack Jesus Christ. If you attack the Sabbath day, it means you attack Jesus Christ. Because who made the heaven and the earth, and who set aside the Sabbath day so that he himself can bless the people, and he himself can sanctify his people so that he can have a fellowship with his people. So the first fellowship day, the Sabbath day in Eden, two persons and God, right? Jesus Christ, Adam and Eve. That's the reason why God set aside the Sabbath day, because God, Jesus Christ himself, wanted to have a good relationship with Adam and Eve. That was the tradition of God. That's the beauty of Sabbath day. Actually, Satan's plan is to attack the Sabbath day so that people do not have relationship with Jesus Christ. People do not have good relationship with, family, right? So it's very dangerous to break the Sabbath day and not to put this very important day. Let's see here in Revelation 14:6-7. Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and the earth. So this is for the final message for humanity. Many people are arguing that the Sabbath was in the beginning. It's not related to us. But the Revelation warns us that fear God and give Him glory for the hour of judgment. So this is the final time, and worship in who made the heaven. Who made the heaven and the earth? Jesus Christ. So people are saying Jesus Christ is He's the beginning, and He is the present, and He's in the future. They used to say it, but they don't want to connect Genesis to Revelation. They said this is this is an old one, and this is a new one. This is like this. They always analyze texts and passages. But we accept Jesus Christ is in the past, He's in the present, He's in the future. He is eternity. If you believe that, the Sabbath cannot be disappear from humanity. So let's look at the Sabbath actually is the center of our life. The Sabbath takes us back to our origin. That's what I already told just a while ago, right? When you keep the Sabbath day, it's talk about Jesus created the heaven, the earth, and God made you as His own image. That's what God wants to remember and to think about it. So when you keep the Sabbath day, there is a restoration. There is a restoration. Every Sabbath day reminds us that in this world of sin and separation from God, we are brought back into harmony and oneness with our Creator. So weekly basis, we come to church and worship our God means we have fallen before, right? So Romans say we are fortunate of God's glory, but Jesus redeemed us and Jesus saved us from this sinful world, and now we come back into harmony and oneness with our God. That's why the Sabbath is the day we receive restoration from our sinful world and our sinful body and our sinful mind. As we come to church on the Sabbath day, we understand that there is eternal values. The weekly Sabbath center us in the eternal values of God's kingdom. As we come to Sabbath day, we understand that Jesus was in the past. He is everlasting God, and we are continue this value, right? We are continue this blessing. We are continue God's sanctification from the beginning, the present, and the future for everlasting. As we come to church on the Sabbath day, we are in His kingdom, in the future kingdom. And that's what we know, the value of God's kingdom. Let's talk about this. God is the most authoritative person in the universe. That's why Satan hates Jesus Christ so much. That's why he rebelled in heaven. Jesus Christ was the central issue for Satan, because Satan claimed that God was unfair and unjust, and God didn't care His people. That was the argument. But the Sabbath is a weekly reminder of God's everlasting authority. So Satan didn't want to recognize God's authority, Jesus Christ's authority. That's why he rebelled, right? He rebelled. So the reason why God put the seventh day, the Sabbath, is He had the authority to create the universe and to set aside the day that we can worship. If we attack the Sabbath day, what will going to happen? We will be like Satan. We attack God's authority. God's authority. Today, we have no choice because we are created being. Even though you believe God or not, because God is still God, right? So Satan is also still Satan. He hasn't been changed. Even though he attacked God for centuries and years, and his position never changed. He's just waiting for the punishment from God, right? That's why today we have to understand that as we come to church on Sabbath day, we accept that Jesus Christ is the most authoritative person. And Jesus is our King and Jesus is our Lord. In Revelation 11:19 says, John looked up the heaven, and what he saw is the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. It is a little bit strange, right? Many Christians say, after Jesus died, we don't belong to the ark of the covenants or the 10 commandments. But the Apostle John said, he looked up to the heavenly sanctuary and he saw the ark of his covenant was seen in his temple. So this point to God's authority based in His law is still valid, and which includes the Sabbath. The Sabbath is still valid. For God's end time people, God will have an end time people who respect his authority and are obedient to him. It means God has this authority. What authority? He set aside the Sabbath day. He wants to bless us. He wants to sanctify us. He wants to have fellowship with us. That's why we have to have obedience to him. The devil hates this so much that according to Revelation 13, in the last day, those who keep the Sabbath day and those who have obedience to God's authority, Satan will pass a decree to those who keep God's commandment. The Revelation say they will no longer be able to buy or sell and even actually face a death decree. Because Satan will act as much as he can. That's what we have to understand, that the Sabbath is so much attacked by people and Satans. So I would like to end with this. The Sabbath is a symbol of fellowship. A symbol of fellowship. The devil hates the Sabbath because it's an eternal symbol of our fellowship with Christ, both personally and corporately. Adam and Eve spent their first day together, the Sabbath, in fellowship with God and each other. That's why we have to accept God's authority. And Jesus designed us to recognize that life's true meaning comes in fellowship with one another and with Him. The Sabbath is a day of family unity, when family comes together to worship, spend time together. So here, in Hebrews 10, 23, 25, instruct us that, consider one another and stir up love and good works, and not forsake assembling together. And also it says, exhort one another. The reason why Satan hates Sabbath so much is he doesn't want fellowship. He doesn't want fellowship. He wants to break our fellowship with God. Because God exactly said on the Sabbath day, He will come to Adam and Eve and to have a good fellowship with them. The same thing today, on the Sabbath day, God comes, Jesus comes among us, and He spent with us. He had fellowship with us. That's why we should not miss it. We should not miss it. When Jesus was on the earth, what happened? He made the miracle on Sabbath day most of the time. Maybe 7 or 8 times on Sabbath day, rather than the other days. The same reason, I encourage all our church members today. If you have anxiety, if you have pain, if you have diseases, just come to church. If you can, just sit. And Jesus healed the patient. Jesus healed people who are mourning. Jesus comforted people who have anxiety. So as we come to church on the Sabbath day, Jesus bless us. Jesus heal us. And Jesus sanctify us. Right? So that's great things God has done on the 7th day, the Sabbath day. That's why we should not miss it. So some people would say, I think I have a message on this already. Some people say, I just sit on my couch and I can watch a good sermon and just do my worship by myself. But the blessing of corporate worship is huge, very huge. Here Ellen White says, let us not forsake the assembling of ourselves together. When believers assemble to worship God, there is a sweet and communion, and angels of God are present. Corporate worship is very important. But personal devotion, okay, every day you can do it. But corporate worship, we should not miss it. And also in education, page 168 say, one singing, prayer, and worship, lifting the soul. So song is one of the most effective means of impressing the heart with spiritual truth. It is one of the most effective means of awakening the spiritual life. Right? We come to church and singing together. Somebody would say, we don't have music. We don't have a good singers in our church. It's boring. Somebody would say it. But prayer, singing together, even though your voice is out tuned, no problem, because you are still praising. Ellen White said it is one of the most effective means of awakening the spiritual life. What kind of song you are singing, as long as you are praising and glorify God, it's awakening our spiritual life. It's awakening our spiritual life. In Adventist home page 524 says, on fellowship strengthened in faith, by meeting together and speaking of the love of God, we may strengthen one another in the faith. Come together and speaking. For example, somebody comes to a church and we say, hello, how are you? Only you say, hello, how are you? It will affect in a good position for somebody else. Because this is on Sabbath day, we come together and do worship together. And the testimony for the church, volume 5, page 491 says, the house of God is the gate of heaven. The gate of heaven. It doesn't say your house. It says the house of God is the gate of heaven. And praise, prayer, and testimony are the means ordained of God to prepare the people for the church above. The church above. So as you come to church, corporate worship, this is connecting to the future church we are spending with Jesus Christ. Amen? So this is very important. When you are feeling lonely, when you are feeling something strange, when you are not feeling well, when you are sick, when you are feeling headache, come to church because God invites us to have a good fellowship and He will bless us and He will sanctify us. He will heal us from all our pains. That's why Satan do not like attending church on Saturday. That's why many people, the majority of the people in the world are attacking Sabbath very much. Even in my origin country, Burma, if you talk about the Sabbath, what they say is, we are not from history, we are in new covenant. They always say we are still in the old covenant. When the Sabbath was installed in the Garden of Eden, there was no Israel, no Jewish, no Romans, no Ethiopian, right? No Burmese, right? God set Sabbath day for all the people to come until we meet Jesus Christ in heaven. So that's why today we are here. We are very fortunate that we understand the meaning of the Sabbath day, how much God blessed the Sabbath day. So may God bless you as we come to Sabbath day and to worship our God. Thank you so much.